Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and take a journey inward. Picture the people who have walked through your life. Some left footprints of kindness, of love, of understanding, but then there are others. Others who, with cold precision, left scars. Not by accident, no. Their actions were deliberate, their words barbed, their intentions cruel. And here's the hard truth: they knew what they were doing. They calculated your pain, measured it, and chose to proceed. Now, you may think forgiveness is the noble path, and yes, forgiveness is powerful. But today I'm not here to talk about forgiveness. I'm here to talk about boundaries, about dignity, about self-worth. You see, when someone damages you intentionally, they reveal who they are, not just in that moment, but in the essence of their character. They are telling you in no uncertain terms, this is what I'm capable of. Believe them. Don't dress it up. Don't make excuses for them. And above all, don't hand them another weapon in the form of a second chance. Why? Because the first chance wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Imagine your life as a beautiful garden. You've cultivated it with love, with effort, with care. When someone storms into your garden and tramples your flowers, they aren't clumsy, they are careless. They didn't trip, they stomped. And if you invite them back, thinking this time they'll admire the roses, what are you really doing? You're handing them a bigger boot. But here's the twist: this isn't about anger. It isn't about revenge. It's about liberation. When you decide that someone who intentionally hurt you doesn't deserve another chance, you're not closing a door on them, you're opening one for yourself. You're stepping into a room filled with self-respect and peace. You deserve people who lift you up, not those who tear you down. You deserve those who see your value, not those who undermine it. The world has enough challenges without us inviting saboteurs into our lives. So, stand tall. Draw that line. Not with hate, but with clarity. Let them know that their chapter in your story is finished. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to walk away. And when doubt creeps in, and it will remember, this forgiveness is for you, but second chances are for those who earn them. You owe them nothing, but you owe yourself everything. When someone intentionally hurts you, they reveal more than just a moment of bad judgment or a lapse in character. They unveil the core of who they are, a part of themselves that operates not on accident, but on deliberate intent. This is not about mistakes, misunderstandings, or human frailty. This is about choices. Intentional harm is a calculated act, one that carries with it a clear and deliberate objective: to wound, to destabilize, to exert power, or to diminish your sense of self. It is a moment where their actions are not guided by carelessness but by purpose, and it is in this moment that you must choose to believe them. Too often, when people harm us, we rush to find excuses for their behavior. We tell ourselves that they were under stress, that they didn't mean it, or that their actions were simply a reflection of their circumstances. These rationalizations can provide temporary comfort, a way to smooth over the jagged edges of betrayal. But this comfort is fleeting, and worse, it blinds us to a fundamental truth. When someone harms you intentionally, they are showing you who they are. They are demonstrating the values they hold, the limits of their empathy, and the way they prioritize themselves over the well-being of others. This is not to say that people cannot change or grow, but growth requires acknowledgement, effort, and accountability. Without these elements, any claim of change is empty, a shallow promise that often leads to repeated patterns of harm. Recognizing the intent behind someone's actions is not an act of cynicism or unforgiveness, it is an act of clarity. It allows you to step back and see the situation for what it truly is, rather than what you wish it could be. Believing someone when they show you their true nature requires courage. It is far easier to cling to the version of them that once brought joy, comfort, or love into your life. It is tempting to focus on their potential, to hold on to the hope that they could return to being the person you thought they were. But potential is not reality. When someone makes the deliberate choice to harm you, they are prioritizing their own desires, ego or power over your trust, safety and dignity. This is who they are in that moment, and it may very well be who they will continue to be unless they take deliberate steps to change. To believe them is to accept the painful reality that not everyone who enters your life does so with good intentions. It is a recognition that while you may wish for goodness in others, not all people will meet that hope. This acceptance is not about closing yourself off from the world or becoming distrustful, rather. It is about grounding yourself in the truth. It is about protecting your heart and your life from those who have shown themselves to be capable of intentional harm. Trust is a fragile thing built slowly and shattered quickly. When someone intentionally damages that trust, they fracture the foundation of your relationship with them. And while relationships can sometimes be repaired, this repair must be earned, not assumed. Believing someone when they show you their true character means holding them accountable for their actions. It means refusing to let their intentions be dismissed or downplayed. It means honoring yourself enough to walk away if necessary, not out of spite or anger, but out of respect for your own worth. Ultimately, when someone reveals who they are through intentional harm, they are giving you a gift, albeit a painful one. They are showing you the reality of their character, stripping away any illusions or pretenses. Your job is to take that revelation seriously, to let it guide your decisions, and to protect yourself from further harm. Believing them is not an act of bitterness, it is an act of wisdom. It is choosing to prioritize your well-being over the hope that they will become someone they have not yet chosen to be. And that choice is the truest act of self-respect. Forgiveness and boundaries are often intertwined in discussions about healing, but they serve fundamentally different purposes. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the weight of resentment and anger. It is an internal act that can bring peace to your heart. Boundaries, on the other hand, are about protecting yourself from future harm. They are external actions that define how you allow others to treat you. When someone has intentionally hurt you, it's not enough to simply forgive and move on, as though nothing happened. You must recognize the necessity of boundaries clear, firm, and unwavering to ensure that the harm is not repeated. Forgiveness, while powerful, can sometimes be misunderstood. It is not a declaration that what happened was acceptable. It is not a sign of weakness or surrender. Forgiveness is for you, not for the person who hurt you. It allows you to free yourself from the emotional grip of their actions, to unshackle yourself from the anger or pain that might otherwise consume you. But forgiveness without boundaries can leave you vulnerable. It can open the door for the same person to walk back into your life and hurt you again. Boundaries are a statement of self-respect. They declare to the world and to yourself that you value your well-being enough to protect it. When someone has intentionally caused you pain, they have demonstrated a lack of respect for your emotional or physical safety. By setting boundaries, you are not being cruel or vindictive, you are simply ensuring that your trust is not misplaced a second time. These boundaries are not walls that isolate you from the world, they are gates that you control, deciding who has access to your time, energy, and emotional space. There is a common misconception that setting boundaries is an act of anger or bitterness. In reality, boundaries are an act of clarity and empowerment. They are a way of saying, I have learned from this experience, and I will not allow it to happen again. Without boundaries, forgiveness can become an empty gesture, one that leaves you exposed to the same patterns of harm. This is particularly true when dealing with people who have shown a pattern of intentional behavior. Such individuals often rely on the kindness or leniency of others to continue their harmful actions. By establishing firm boundaries, you disrupt that pattern and protect yourself from becoming a target again. It's important to understand that setting boundaries is not about punishing the other person. It's not about revenge or holding a grudge. It's about recognizing the reality of the situation and taking steps to protect your own peace of mind. When someone intentionally damages you, they have shown a disregard for your well-being. You owe it to yourself to ensure that this disregard does not continue. Boundaries are not about them, they are about you. They are a reflection of your commitment to your own growth and healing. Sometimes people feel guilty for setting boundaries, especially with those they care about. They worry about being perceived as cold or unforgiving. But guilt is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign that you're breaking a pattern of self-sacrifice that no longer serves you. Remember, you are not responsible for the feelings of those who have hurt you, especially when their actions were deliberate. You are responsible for your own well-being, and boundaries are a necessary part of that responsibility. When you set boundaries, you are also setting an example for others. You are showing them that it is possible to forgive without forgetting, to let go of anger without letting go of self-respect. You are teaching them that love and trust are privileges, not entitlements, and that they must be earned through consistent actions, not empty words. In this way, boundaries are not just a way of protecting yourself, they are a way of fostering accountability and respect in your relationships. Ultimately, forgiveness and boundaries are two sides of the same coin. Forgiveness frees your heart, but boundaries protect it. Together, they allow you to move forward not as a victim, but as someone who has learned, grown, and reclaimed their power. When someone intentionally hurts you, boundaries are not an option, they are a necessity. They are the clearest expression of your worth, and they are what ensure that your forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, not an invitation for further harm. Recognizing your self-worth is a transformative realization, one that shapes how you allow others to treat you and determines the kind of relationships you cultivate. When someone intentionally hurts you, it's an affront, not just to your emotions, but to your intrinsic value as a person. Allowing someone who has intentionally caused harm back into your life without consequence or discernment can diminish your sense of self-worth. It sends a message to yourself and to them that their actions are tolerable, that your boundaries are flexible, and that their behavior holds no real consequence. This is a dangerous precedent to set, one that can erode your confidence, self-esteem, and overall well-being. Your self-worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you respond to that treatment. When someone deliberately harms you, they show disregard for your feelings, your trust, and your humanity. This is not a reflection of your inadequacy, but of their failure to honor the basic decency that relationships require. Recognizing this is essential because it allows you to separate your worth from their behavior. You are not diminished by their actions unless you allow those actions to dictate how you see yourself. By choosing to protect your boundaries and uphold your dignity, you affirm that their harm does not define you. Protecting your self-worth requires courage and clarity, especially in moments when the person who hurt you seeks forgiveness or another chance. It's tempting to allow them back into your life, to believe their promises of change, especially if they were once a significant part of your happiness. However, self-worth demands discernment. It requires you to evaluate their actions, not just their words. Someone who truly values you will take responsibility for their actions, demonstrate genuine remorse, and show through consistent behavior that they are committed to rebuilding trust. Without these elements, granting them unrestricted access to your life undermines your own value. There is an innate desire in many of us to repair relationships, to forgive and forget, to return to a place of harmony. But this desire must be balanced with the understanding that not everyone deserves a place in your life. When someone intentionally hurts you, they have made a choice to prioritize their own needs, desires, or ego over your well-being. This choice is a violation of the trust that relationships are built on. Allowing them back without accountability signals that their actions have no lasting impact, that your worth is negotiable. In protecting your self-worth, you are not being unforgiving, you are being discerning. People who intentionally cause harm often rely on the kindness or tolerance of others to continue their behavior. They count on your reluctance to set boundaries, on your willingness to give second chances. By recognizing your worth and refusing to accept their harmful behavior, you disrupt this cycle. You show them that you are not someone to be taken for granted, that your kindness is not weakness, and that your trust is a privilege to be earned. This is not about punishing them, it's about honoring yourself. There is a profound strength in saying, "I deserve better." It's not an act of arrogance, but an acknowledgement of your inherent value. When you stand firm in this belief, you set a standard for how you expect to be treated. This standard not only protects you from future harm, but also attracts people who respect and appreciate you for who you are. Those who are unwilling or unable to meet this standard naturally fall away, leaving space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Protecting your self-worth also requires letting go of guilt. It's common to feel responsible for repairing relationships, even when the other person was at fault. You might worry about being perceived as harsh, unforgiving, or unkind. But self-worth is not about how others perceive you, it's about how you perceive yourself. Letting someone who intentionally hurt you back into your life without conditions does not make you kind or compassionate, it makes you vulnerable to repeated harm. True compassion begins with yourself, with recognizing that you deserve to be treated with respect, care, and dignity. Ultimately, your self-worth is the foundation of your relationships, your choices, and your happiness. It is not selfish to protect it, it is necessary. By valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who intentionally hurt you, you affirm that your peace, your happiness, and your integrity are not negotiable. You set a powerful example for others, and most importantly for yourself, that you are worthy of love and respect, and you will accept nothing less. When someone intentionally harms you, it's natural to seek explanations, to try to rationalize their behavior, or to minimize the severity of their actions. You might tell yourself that they were stressed, overwhelmed, or acting out of character. These justifications can provide a temporary balm for the pain they caused, but they also risk distorting the reality of what happened. Intentional harm is not a mistake or an accident, it is a choice. To excuse such behavior is to ignore the deliberate nature of their actions, and doing so can leave you vulnerable to further harm. Excusing intentional harm often stems from a desire to maintain harmony or avoid confrontation. You may care deeply about the person who hurt you and struggle to reconcile their actions with the relationship you've shared. It's easier to attribute their behavior to external circumstances than to acknowledge that they acted with intent. This mental gymnastics, while understandable, ultimately does a disservice to your own well-being. It shifts the focus away from the harm they caused and places the burden of resolution on you. In doing so, it minimizes their responsibility and perpetuates a cycle where their behavior is tolerated or overlooked. Intentional harm carries with it a specific weight. It is premeditated, calculated, and executed with an awareness of its impact. Unlike mistakes, which arise from misunderstanding or poor judgment, intentional harm reflects a conscious decision to prioritize one's own desires, anger, or power over the well-being of another. By excusing such behavior, you send a message to yourself and to them that their actions are acceptable or understandable. This not only undermines your sense of self-worth, but also enables them to repeat their behavior without accountability. Excusing harm can also create a false sense of security. You may convince yourself that the person's intentions weren't as malicious as they seemed, or that the situation won't happen again. But without genuine accountability and a clear commitment to change, the underlying patterns that led to their behavior remain unaddressed. Intentional harm often stems from deeper issues: disregard for boundaries, a lack of empathy, or a desire to control. These issues do not resolve themselves simply because you choose to forgive or forget. Excusing their actions without holding them accountable allows these patterns to persist and potentially escalate. It's important to differentiate between understanding and excusing. Understanding seeks to comprehend why someone acted the way they did, often as part of the healing process. It can help you gain clarity and closure, but it does not absolve them of responsibility. Excusing, on the other hand, absolves them of accountability and minimizes the impact of their actions. It creates an environment where their behavior is normalized, even justified, and this can be damaging not only to you but to the broader dynamics of your relationships. People who intentionally harm others often rely on excuses to evade accountability. They may downplay their actions, shift blame, or exploit your empathy to avoid facing the consequences of their choices. When you excuse their behavior, you inadvertently reinforce these tactics. You enable them to continue acting without consideration for how their actions affect others. This dynamic can be especially harmful in close relationships, where patterns of intentional harm and excuse-making can erode trust, self-esteem, and emotional safety over time. Holding someone accountable for intentional harm does not mean seeking revenge or harboring resentment. It means recognizing the seriousness of their actions and responding in a way that prioritizes your well-being. This may involve setting boundaries, limiting contact, or even ending the relationship if necessary. Accountability is not about punishing them, it's about protecting yourself and ensuring that their behavior does not continue to impact your life. By refusing to excuse intentional harm, you take a stand for your own value and dignity. It is natural to want to see the best in people, especially those you care about. You may hope that their actions were out of character or that they will change with time. While this hope is valid, it must be balanced with the reality of their behavior. Change requires acknowledgement, effort, and a commitment to doing better. Without these elements, hope becomes an excuse to tolerate behavior that diminishes your worth. By refusing to excuse intentional harm, you create space for genuine accountability and growth both for them and for yourself. Ultimately, excusing intentional harm undermines your ability to heal and move forward. It traps you in a cycle of rationalization and vulnerability, where your boundaries and self-worth are compromised. Recognizing harm for what it is, a deliberate choice, is a necessary step in reclaiming your power and protecting your peace. It allows you to respond with clarity and self-respect, ensuring that the harm stops with you. Life can be compared to a well-tended garden, a sacred space that reflects the care, effort, and attention you dedicate to nurturing it. Every choice you make, every relationship you cultivate, and every boundary you set contributes to the health and vibrancy of this garden. When someone intentionally causes harm, they act as a destructive force, stepping carelessly on the flowers you've nurtured, uprooting the plants that sustain you, and leaving chaos in a space that should bring you peace. Allowing such individuals to remain in or re-enter your life without consequence is akin to leaving the gate to your garden wide open for anyone to trample through. To protect your life and its beauty, you must fiercely guard your garden and remove those who harm it. A garden thrives only when it is actively protected and cultivated. It requires removing weeds, warding off pests, and ensuring that the environment supports growth. Similarly, your life flourishes when you are intentional about the people and influences you allow into it. Harmful individuals, especially those who act with intention, are like invasive weeds consuming your time, energy, and emotional resources without offering anything in return. Their presence not only stifles your growth but can also cause you to question the value of what you've built. By removing these individuals, you create space for positive relationships and experiences that align with your vision for a fulfilling and peaceful life. Protecting your life does not mean isolating yourself or becoming distrustful of others. It means exercising discernment. Just as a gardener doesn't abandon the entire garden because of a few pests, you don't need to shut yourself off from relationships entirely. Instead, you learn to recognize the signs of harm and take appropriate action to address them. This might mean setting boundaries, limiting access, or, in some cases, walking away entirely. These actions are not acts of cruelty but of care, both for yourself and for the health of your relationships. When someone intentionally harms you, they show a blatant disregard for the care and effort you've put into building your life. They prioritize their own desires or power over your well-being, leaving behind damage that you must work to repair. While it's tempting to minimize their actions or hope for change, it's essential to remember that your garden, the space you've created for yourself, is sacred. Allowing someone who has already caused harm to remain in your life without accountability is an act of neglect, one that compromises your peace and self-respect. A healthy garden requires balance, just as a fulfilling life does. It thrives when there is harmony, when each element contributes positively to the whole. Harmful individuals disrupt this balance, taking more than they give and leaving behind emotional or psychological debris that you are forced to clean up. By removing them, you restore equilibrium and ensure that your energy is directed toward growth and positivity rather than damage control. This act of removal is not about punishment, but about preservation of your peace, your energy, and your sense of self. It can be challenging to remove someone from your life, especially if they were once a significant part of it. You may worry about the consequences, feel guilty about letting go, or cling to the hope that they will change. But a gardener understands that not all plants thrive in the same environment. Some may need to be transplanted elsewhere, while others must be removed entirely to protect the integrity of the garden. Similarly, not everyone is meant to remain in your life. By accepting this, you give yourself permission to prioritize your well-being over the expectations or opinions of others. Your garden is not just a reflection of your effort, but also a testament to your boundaries. The people and experiences you allow into your life shape its beauty and health. When you choose to guard your garden fiercely, you demonstrate your commitment to yourself and your vision for a fulfilling life. This doesn't mean you will never encounter harm or difficulty, but it does mean you are prepared to address these challenges with clarity and resolve. You recognize that protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness but of wisdom. In the end, the choice to fiercely guard your life is a declaration of your self-worth. It is a recognition that what you've built, your peace, your joy, your aspirations, is worth protecting. When someone shows they are willing to harm that space, they forfeit their right to be part of it. By removing them, you are not only safeguarding your garden, but also creating room for those who will nurture, support, and celebrate it alongside you. This is how you ensure your life continues to thrive, untainted by those who seek to diminish it. Trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. It is the invisible thread that binds people together, creating a sense of safety, reliability, and mutual respect. When someone intentionally harms you, they break that thread. This is not a simple misunderstanding or an unintentional mistake. It is a conscious decision to disregard your feelings, your boundaries, and the trust you've placed in them. Rebuilding trust after such an act is not impossible, but it is a process that requires time, effort, and genuine accountability. Trust should never be restored lightly, especially when the harm was deliberate. Restoring trust begins with acknowledgement. The person who caused the harm must take full responsibility for their actions without excuses, justifications, or deflections. They must recognize the pain they've caused and show a genuine willingness to understand its impact on you. Without this level of accountability, any attempt to rebuild trust will be hollow and superficial. Trust cannot exist in the absence of accountability, and offering it freely to someone who has not earned it only sets the stage for further harm. It is natural to want to believe in the goodness of those who hurt you, especially if they were once a significant part of your life. You may hope they will change, that their harmful actions were an anomaly, and that the relationship can return to what it once was. While this hope is understandable, it must be tempered with realism. Actions speak louder than words, and genuine change is demonstrated through consistent behavior over time. Promises of improvement mean little without tangible evidence to back them up. If the person who harmed you truly values your relationship, they will be willing to put in the effort required to rebuild trust. Rebuilding trust is not a one-sided process. It requires the person who caused harm to actively work to repair the damage they've done, but it also requires you to set boundaries and hold them accountable. This may feel uncomfortable or even confrontational, but it is essential to ensure that the process of rebuilding trust is authentic. Boundaries are not rules to shut people out, but rather guidelines to protect your well-being and create an environment where trust can be nurtured. By clearly communicating your needs and expectations, you create the conditions necessary for trust to grow again. Patience is a critical element in rebuilding trust. It cannot be rushed or forced. Trust grows gradually, like a fragile plant that needs consistent care and attention to thrive. This means allowing time to observe whether the person's actions align with their words, whether they respect your boundaries, and whether they demonstrate genuine remorse and a commitment to change. It also means giving yourself permission to take the time you need to heal and evaluate the situation. Trusting too quickly after intentional harm can leave you vulnerable to further hurt, while taking the necessary time allows you to rebuild trust with clarity and confidence. Restoring trust after intentional harm also requires self-awareness. It is important to recognize your own feelings, needs, and limits. Ask yourself whether you truly believe the person is capable of change, whether their actions match their words, and whether you feel safe and respected in their presence. Trusting someone again is not just about forgiving them, it is about believing that they have earned the right to be trusted. If you find that their actions continue to harm you or that they are unwilling to take accountability, it may be necessary to reconsider the relationship altogether. Trust is a gift, not a guarantee. It is earned through consistent actions, respect, and a commitment to growth. When someone intentionally harms you, they forfeit that gift. Rebuilding it requires effort and sincerity on their part, as well as discernment and self-respect on yours. Trusting someone who has hurt you is not a decision to be taken lightly. It is a choice that must be based on evidence of genuine change and a mutual commitment to healing and growth. Anything less risks repeating the cycle of harm. Ultimately, trust is a reflection of your values and your boundaries. It is not about being naive or overly forgiving, but about honoring yourself and the relationships you choose to invest in. By being deliberate and discerning in how and when you restore trust, you protect yourself from further harm while creating the possibility for meaningful connection. Whether you choose to rebuild trust or to move forward without that person in your life, the decision must prioritize your peace, your well-being, and your self-worth above all else. Thank you. Going.